Welcome to Eads History. This is the second video assignment for Reconstruction America, titled The South Strikes Back. Reconstruction brought radical change to the social and political life in the South. Whites, especially those in the planter class, no longer held political power. Blacks now voted and held political office. Between 1868 and 1876, Southern states elected 600 black state legislators. 14 freedmen served as congressmen from the South. 2 freedmen, Blanche Bruce and Hiram Revels, were elected senators from the state of Mississippi. P.B.S. Pinchback and C.C. Antoine served as lieutenant governors of Louisiana. P.B.S. Pinchback briefly filled in as governor for 30 days. Although many blacks now voted and held political office, none of them were elected governor, nor were there many African American judges. Again, many blacks now voted post the Civil War, but none of them were elected governor, nor were there many African American judges. Those jobs went to white Republicans, whom Southern whites divided into 2 groups, the carpetbagger and the scalawag. Carpetbaggers were those Northerners who had traveled to the South to facilitate Reconstruction, or in most cases, to profit from it. Some were Union veterans, others were merchants. Carpetbaggers also included Northern teachers, social workers, or preachers who were employed by the Freedmen's Bureau. Now, why were they called carpetbaggers? Well, it was presumed that these folks had left the North so fast to exploit the South that they carried everything they owned in a carpetbag, which was a piece of luggage that resembles a large duffel bag and was made out of carpet. The scalawag was a Southerner who basically did the same thing as the carpetbagger. Many were Republicans or Unionists who had worked earlier to make Reconstruction successful or to make money. Many of these scalawags had voted to stay in the Union back in 1860. They were even more reviled by Southern whites than the carpetbaggers, since, after all, scalawags were Southerners. Most Southerners believed that the scalawags should have known better. One notable scalawag was Confederate General James Longstreet of the Army of Northern Virginia. Longstreet decided that the South must change its ways after the Civil War. Thus, he moves to New Orleans after the war to become a cotton broker, and there he also becomes a surveyor of customs, and later the adjutant general of the state militia while the Republicans hold power. Later, he would also serve as the U.S. ambassador to the Ottoman Empire and the U.S. Commissioner of Railroads, appointed by Republicans. Both the carpetbaggers and the scalawags were sources of resentment to white Southerners and often the focus of violence. Yes, Reconstruction in the South was violent. White Southerners also targeted African Americans. In Grayson County, Texas, 3 whites murdered 3 former slaves. But the most prominent group that terrorized the southern countryside was the first Ku Klux Klan. Now, this group started out as a group of pranksters, but then they formalized as the Ku Klux Klan in 1866 in Pulaski, Tennessee, and they had costumes and secret rituals that were common to social groups. After turning to intimidating freedmen and white Republicans, the popularity of the Ku Klux Klan spread to other southern states, albeit under different names. In Mississippi, the Klan killed a black Republican leader in front of his family. In 1870, 3 scalawag Republicans were murdered in Georgia. In the same year, an armed mob of whites assaulted a Republican political rally in Alabama, killing 4 blacks and wounding 54. Congress responded by passing 3 enforcement acts to protect freedmen in the South. The first levied penalties to anyone who interfered with any citizen's right to vote. The second placed the election of congressmen under the surveillance of federal election commissioners and marshals. The third enforcement act, called the Ku Klux Klan Act, outlawed the formation of conspiracies, the wearing of disguises, the resisting of officers, and the intimidation of officials. It also authorized the president to suspend habeas corpus, the right to be formally charged when arrested, where necessary to suppress armed combinations. In 1871, the federal government used the enforcement acts to put down uprisings in South Carolina, but overall, These enforcement acts proved weak and ineffective. On Easter Sunday in 1873, a mob of vigilantes attacked a group of black Republicans in Colfax, Louisiana, slaughtering 81. Truth is, by 1870, the average Northerner had lost interest in Reconstruction and had become more interested in making money. They were tired of maintaining a military force in the South large enough to enforce the Reconstruction Act, the Reconstruction Amendments, and the Enforcement Acts. And finally, there's a very practical reason for Northern disinterest. Radical Republicans either began to retire from Congress or simply die, as in the case of Thaddeus Stevens. And without Stevens or Sumner to lead the charge, interest in congressional Reconstruction waned. This is a common trend we will see again and again with different causes. In 1869, Republican control of the southern states began to collapse. As more troops left the South, white resistance to Reconstruction increased to the point that African American men learned to stay home on Election Day. For example, after white disruption and intimidation made a farce out of the 1874 elections in the state of Mississippi, the Republican governor called on Washington for help, and his response from Grant was this: "The whole public is tired out with these autumnal outbreaks in the South. Preserve the peace by the forces of your own state." By 1876, Republican regimes had fallen in all southern states except Louisiana and South Carolina. Texas received home rule in 1874 and rewrote its constitution in 1876. This happens to be the current constitution of the state of Texas. By 1876, Blanche Spruce was the only African American left in the United States Senate. Fact is, by the mid-1870s, it was apparent that although white Southerners had lost the war, they were indeed winning the peace, and this was a major issue heading into the presidential election of 1876, which is your next video assignment. Thank you for your time, and may the force be with you.